the pervasive sentiment that the UK has, in some sense, run out of money.
A very particular idea of sovereignty over economic good sense.
The British government is talking tough. Since the war began in Ukraine, it's imposed strong sanctions on Russia.
He thought the United States was the world's greatest force for good, and that communism was the biggest threat to freedom. But at the same time, he thought the US and Soviet Union should find common ground on important issues like arms control.
This notion that there's no money left is apparently shared by both the Conservatives, anything else would be irresponsible, and Labour, who've been remarkably restrained about their spending promises.
Amir goes and gets the money. It's usually wrapped in rubber bands in blocks of 5,000 and 10,000, depending upon denominations.
There is a political conspiracy of silence around the effects of Brexit.
Recently U-turned on a hallmark policy of spending £28 billion a year on green investment.
You know, a lot of people say, wow, isn't it tempting?
As well as individuals with Kremlin connections.
Oligarchs in London will have nowhere to hide.
You know, you've got all these millions and millions of dollars and it's in cash.
We recognize that government is absolutely necessary for an orderly society.
According to the documents, it turned out that the weapons were going to law-abiding citizens, as a rule, to the government of the country.
Do you want a government that comes at you from Washington, or do you want a government that comes from you?
There's unfortunately been people in just about every agency that has fallen victim into a slippery slope of greed.
We believe in the concept of limited government. And we believe that the constitutional republic created by our founding fathers is the best form of limited government that has yet been devised by man.
Few African countries back then had radars that could detect movement of airborne objects. Thus, Boot calmly flew all around Africa without anyone noticing him. And if he did manage to get caught, he would simply invite them to take part in the profits.
The United Nations on Drugs and Crime estimates that roughly $400 billion is generated each year from the sale of illegal drugs.
Joe Biden's generation dreams of conquering heroin.
The Office for Budget Responsibility thinks that ultimately Brexit will cause the UK to be 4% worse off. It's about £100 billion a year that the economy is not producing, £40 billion of tax revenues.
Professor Klaus Schwab was born in 1938 in Ravensburg, Germany, where Nazi crimes against humanity were committed.
Even the UN didn't shy away from using the services of his company to deliver humanitarian aid.
Father, Eugene Wilhelm Schwab, was the managing director of Escher Weiss Ravensburg, a company that used slave labor to manufacture weapons of war for the Third Reich.
Boot's auto and air fleet was constantly expanding, and his company's employees were becoming more and more numerous.
New York, my city, where the wheels of the global economy never stop turning.
Joe Biden looked at Bill Clinton, a charismatic young Democrat who many people compared to a Republican, and saw himself. More than 20 million people tuned in on average every week to see contestants face off in various business-related challenges. So the seasoned political veteran and energetic young president teamed up.
The other big piece of legislation on Capitol Hill tonight is the crime bill.
And the fear it provokes are crippling our society.
But the real star was Donald Trump. NBC quickly shelved plans to have rotating hosts and built the entire show around him.
London is awash with Russian money.
These are homes valued at tens of millions of pounds.
Years later, Klaus Schwab joined the board of directors at Escher Weiss Ravensburg, where he played a key role in the development of South Africa's nuclear weapons program during the darkest years of the racist apartheid regime.
So much so, it's even earned a nickname, Londongrad.
For basically every other central bank in the world, including the Fed and the ECB, when borrowing costs rise and bond prices fall, as they are currently, the central bank just accepts the losses.
Suddenly, I could see.
The crime bill before Congress gives you a chance to do something about it, a chance to be tough and smart.
But in the UK, the Treasury is expected to compensate the bank for these losses, to the tune of about £35 billion in 2023 and £40 billion in 2024.
The most significant federal effort to deal with violent crime in America that has ever been undertaken.
I was seriously in trouble. I was billions of dollars in debt. But I fought back and I won. Big league. And as the master, I want to pass along my knowledge to somebody else.
We see the UK pretty close to the bottom of the league table in terms of the forecast for economic growth, particularly in 2023. So the UK essentially sees no growth at all, and the only country that was worse than the UK was sanctioned Russia.
There are only vague rumors about connections with the KGB and a transportation empire.
Britain had taken offshore banking mainstream.
Getting good people to do bad things, harmful things, while thinking they're good things, it's a dangerous place to be because it looks great. You feel great while you're being used.
Obama, whose story and speaking style made people dream of a better future.
One thing I'd say about the Northern Ireland Protocol is it's given Northern Ireland an incredible trading position in Europe. It's the only place in the whole of Europe which has one foot in the UK single market and another foot in the European Union single market.
And it's wild that at the time that the government is flirting with austerity, it's giving £40 billion a year to a central bank that can't actually go bust.
A republic is a limited democracy. It's a form of government based upon the principle of limited majority rule.
In theory, the City of London is a place where the UK being able to make its own rules should be important.
The fathers of philosophy, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, were all staunch critics of democracy.
This is our sector that we're the best at, that we know the most about. We were responsible for a lot of rulemaking while we were within the EU. To date, we haven't seen the results of that.
History's greatest minds all observed that even a well-intended democracy can breed deception, division, and ultimately total control by the state.
The predictions of doom for the City of London were always overdone.
Now, democracy is a form of government based upon the principle of majority rule. It's easy to understand, easy to sell to the masses, and I might add, deadly.
Big institutions in particular spent time, actually quite early on in the process, Brexit-proofing their operations so that they could operate legally whatever the outcome was.
Now, the final reason the UK might not actually be running out of money is the UK's unique way of operationalising monetary policy.
Banned in China, Falun Gong, a religious movement that emphasizes on spiritual enlightenment and cultivation of virtue.
It goes back to John Major in the 1990s. The Major government introduced golden visas.
Millionaire real estate developer Donald Trump will get a handsome tax break for his latest project on Fifth Avenue.
Essentially, if you were a wealthy foreigner and you wanted residency in the UK, even if you didn't intend to spend all of your time there, you could pay a large investment to win that right.